word for leukocyte is white blood cell. What's another word for leukocyte? White blood cell. What's another word for white blood cell? Leukocyte. Now, white blood cells are going to defend against pathogens, and remember, a pathogen is an infectious organism, okay? So an infectious organism. And that key word actually is organism, okay? And the infectious organisms, I want you to remember, are viruses and bacteria. So is a virus a pathogen? Yes. Is a bacteria a pathogen? Yes. Is pollen, okay, which causes an allergy, is that a pathogen? No, it's not. Is dog hair a pathogen? No, it's not. Viruses and bacteria are pathogens, okay? They're organisms, okay? Whereas an allergen is just something that exists in the environment, like peanuts, okay? That's an allergen. It's not a pathogen, it's an allergen. Do white blood cells defend against pathogens? Yes. Do they remove toxins that our cells produce? Yes. Do they remove waste that our cells produce? Yes. Do they also remove toxins and waste from other organisms? Yes. Do our white blood cells kill some of our cells that are abnormal? Yes. Okay, so you want to make sure you remember all three of these. This is important. Okay? Another important factor here is the phases of moving out of a blood vessel. So if you remember, here's the blood vessel. Now I'm doing this in a review fashion, guys, okay? So this means that the details were in the lectures I've already done. Margination is the first step. Margination means that the white blood cell goes to the edge. Next, when the white blood cell gets to the edge, it goes through. That's called diapedesis. So it's MD, margination diapedesis. And then if the microbe is over here, let's say it's a bacteria, this white blood cell will move from here and then be attracted by chemicals over here. So that's chemotaxis. So you can remember MDC. Okay, so MDC. My dentist Costa. I don't know. Or my Dr. Costa. Something like that. Okay? Not a doctor, but you hopefully it helps. MDC. So what is it? Margination, diapedesis, chemotaxis. So what do you call it when a white blood cell goes from the center of a blood vessel to the edge? Margination. What do you call it when it goes from the center to the edge? Margination. What do you call it when the cell goes from inside the blood and squeezes between the blood vessel walls to outside? That's called what? Diapedesis. And then what do you call it when the cell moves? What do you call it when the cell moves and is attracted by chemicals, okay, is attracted by chemicals to the bacteria? That's called chemotaxis. Now, if it's attracted, it's positive chemotaxis. If it moves away, it's what? Negative chemotaxis. So if you remember from that video, we have the two bacteria that were running away from neutrophil. The bacteria were trying to run away from the chemicals, so that's negative chemotaxis. The neutrophil was chasing after it, so that's positive chemotaxis. So again, margination is the edge, diapedesis is through, movement toward chemical is positive chemotaxis. So what's moving toward the edge of a blood vessel? Margination. What's squeezing between the blood vessel walls to get from inside the blood to outside the blood? Diapedesis. And then attraction of the white blood cell toward the bacteria is what? Positive chemotaxis. Phagocytes. Remember the three phagocytes. And the way you remembered it, we said men. So monocytes, which is the same thing as what? Macrophages. Now, what is the difference between a monocyte and macrophage? This is important. Monocytes are in the blood. When they leave the blood and they go to the interstitial tissue, it's called a macrophage. So let's say that this right here, let's make it in gray. Let's say this was a monocyte. Right now it's a what? Monocyte. And when it leaves, it's now called a what? Macrophage. Okay? So inside the blood, it's a monocyte. When it leaves, it's a macrophage. So are monocytes and macrophages the same thing? Yes, relatively speaking, they are. So what does a monocyte become? Macrophage. What does a monocyte become? Macrophage. So are macrophages phagocytes? Yes. Are eosinophils phagocytes? Yes. Are neutrophils phagocytes? Yes. How do you remember the phagocytes? Men. How do you remember the phagocytes? Men. How do you remember the phagocytes? Men. Men are the what? Phagocytes. Men are the what? Phagocytes. What's another word for monocyte? Macrophage. What's another word for monocyte? Macrophage. What's another word for macrophage? Monocyte. What's another word for macrophage? Monocyte. Now we also have granulocytes, meaning they contain granules. Who has the granules? Ben. Who has the granules? Ben. What does Ben have? Granules. What does Ben have? Granules. Please make sure you remember that. Now, what's another word for neutrophil? Polymorphonuclear leukocyte. Now, guys, on the test, I'm not going to put polymorphonuclear leukocyte, and then the next answer will be nitrogenous leukocyte. I'm not looking to confuse you. So poly means many, morpho means shape, nuclear means nucleus. So multi-shaped nuclei. Okay? So please remember, neutrophils are polymorphonuclear leukocytes, PMNs. Remember, they had 3 to 5 lobes. I would definitely remember it from what you did in lab, that lab model, because most of you, actually everybody did very well on that part. So you want to remember it's 3 to 5 lobes. What's the most common white blood cell? Neutrophil. What's the most common white blood cell? Neutrophil. What's the first to arrive at the site of an infection? Neutrophil. What is the first white blood cell to arrive at the site of an infection? Neutrophil. What's the most common white blood cell? Neutrophil. Which is the least common? Basophil. Which is the most common? Neutrophil. Which is the least common? Basophil. Which is the most common? Neutrophil. Is a neutrophil a phagocyte? Yes. Is a neutrophil a phagocyte? Yes. Do neutrophils release lysosomal defensins? Yes. What do neutrophils release? Lysosomal defensins. Do they kill bacteria? Yes. Do lysosomal defensins kill bacteria? Yes. Prostaglandins are released by neutrophils and indicate what? Pain. What do prostaglandins indicate? Pain. What do prostaglandins indicate? Pain. What indicates pain? Prostaglandins. Remember, look for the letter P. Both have the letter P. What is dead and dying neutrophils? Pus. What's dead and dying neutrophils? Pus. Name a white blood cell that produces prostaglandins? Neutrophil. What's a white blood cell that produces prostaglandins? Neutrophil. What's the first to arrive at the site of an infection? Neutrophil. What type of white blood cell is most abundant? Neutrophil. What's the white blood cell that's most abundant? Neutrophil. Do the neutrophils release lysosomal defensins? Yes. What do prostaglandins indicate? Pain. What do prostaglandins indicate? Pain. What's responsible for pain? Prostaglandins. What's responsible for pain? Prostaglandins. Do neutrophils release prostaglandins? Yes. What are dead and dying neutrophils? Pus. What's the first to arrive at the site of an infection? Neutrophil. What's another word for eosinophil? Acidophil. What's another word for eosinophil? Acidophil. Is a monocyte a phagocyte? Yes. Is an eosinophil a phagocyte? Yes. Is a neutrophil a phagocyte? Yes. How do you remember phagocytes? Men. Okay. And which are the granulocytes? Ben. Which are the granulocytes? Ben. Okay. Phagocytes. Okay. Eosinophil is a phagocyte. We talked about that. It attacks large parasites. This is key, guys. The fact that it attacks large parasites, that's key. So does it attack parasitic worms? Yes. And just remember that video. And guys, you can click on this. As long as you hit control and then left click it, if you have a PC, it'll work. Okay? If not, you just have to find the code. Just type in eosinophil into YouTube, type in like eosinophil attacks parasite, and it'll come right up. Okay? Now, also, is it involved in allergic reactions? Yes. Are eosinophils involved in allergic reactions? Yes. So the two functions of eosinophils is they, 1, attack large parasites, and 2, involved in allergic reactions. So which cell, white blood cell, attacks large parasites and is involved in allergic reactions? Eosinophils. Okay. What is the least abundant white blood cell? Basophils. When it's in the blood, it's called a what? Basophil. When it leaves the blood, it's called a what? Mast cell. So when it's in the blood, it's called a basophil. What's it in the blood? Basophil. What's it called in the blood? Basophil. When a basophil leaves the blood and it goes into the interstitial tissue, which is out here, it's called a what? Mast cell. So is a basophil going to become a mast cell? Yes. Is a basophil going to become a mast cell? Yes. Is a basophil a granulocyte or agranulocyte? Granulocyte. Is a basophil a granulocyte or agranulocyte? Granulocyte. Remember Ben. Ben has the granules. What does Ben have? Granules. What does Ben have? Granules. Who has granules? Ben. What does the B stand for? Basophil. What does the B stand for? Basophil. Which is the least common white blood cell? Basophil. Which is the least common leukocyte? Basophil. Because remember, leukocyte is the same thing as what? white blood cell. Which is the least abundant white blood cell? Basophils. Basophils are in the blood. When they leave the blood, they become what? Mast cells. So therefore, do mast cells have granules? Yes, because it's the same thing. What are the two chemicals that are found in basophils? Histamine and heparin. Does histamine cause vasodilation? Yes. Does histamine cause vasodilation? Yes. Does heparin prevent clotting? Yes. Does heparin prevent clotting? Yes. What prevents clotting? Heparin. What prevents clotting? Heparin. What prevents clotting? Heparin. What causes vasodilation that is secreted by a mast cell? Histamine. What causes vasodilation that's produced by a mast cell? Histamine. Which is the least common white blood cell? Basophil. What's the least common white blood cell? Basophil. Monocytes will eventually become what type of cell? Macrophage. Are monocytes phagocytes? Yes. So therefore are macrophages phagocytes? Yes. Can macrophages serve as antigen-presenting cells? Yes. Is a macrophage a type of antigen-presenting cell? Yes. Okay. Is a macrophage a type of phagocyte? Yes. Are monocytes and macrophages granulocytes or agranulocytes? They are agranulocytes. Because which one has the granules? Ben. Therefore, which one does not have the granules? Lymphocytes and monocytes / macrophages. Okay. How many types of lymphocytes do we have? 3. How many types of lymphocytes do we have? 3. Okay. We have B cells, T cells, and NK cells. I always like to start with NK cells because they're kind of the easiest. What does NK stand for? Natural killer. What does NK stand for? Natural killer. What does NK stand for? Natural killer. What cells are responsible for killing cancer cells? NK cells. What cells are responsible for killing cancer cells? NK cells. Now guys, T cells help with cancer as well, so I don't want to say it's just NK cells, it's both NK and T. What cell is responsible for killing our viral infected cells? NK cells. So if we become infected with a virus, will an NK cell attack it? Yes. If our cells become infected with a virus, do our NK cells attack it? Yes. What's another word for T cell? T lymphocyte. What's another word for T cell? T lymphocyte. What's another word for T lymphocyte? T cell. What's another word for T lymphocyte? T cell. T cells are involved in what type of immunity? Cell-mediated. T cells are involved in what type of immunity? Cell-mediated. What type of cell is involved in cell-mediated immunity? T cells. Which one's cell-mediated? T. So cell-mediated equals T. Okay, humoral equals B. Okay? Cell-mediated T. Cell-mediated T. So I'm going to say cell-mediated, you say T. If I say H, you say B. Okay? Cell-mediated T. Cell-mediated T. Cell-mediated T. H, B. H, B. H, B. Cell-mediated T. Cell-mediated T. H, B. H, B. Cell-mediated T. H, B. Cell-mediated T. H, B. H, B. Cell-mediated T. Okay. The H stands for humoral immunity. What does the H stand for? Humoral immunity. Okay. B cells, or B lymphocytes, eventually become what? Plasma cells. What do B lymphocytes become? Plasma cells. Is B lymphocyte another word for B cell? Yes. What's another word for B lymphocyte? B cell. B lymphocytes eventually become what? Plasma cells. And what do plasma cells secrete? Antibodies. What's another word for antibody? Immunoglobulin. What's another word for antibody? Immunoglobulin. What's another word for antibody? Immunoglobulin. Okay. Now, B cells become what type of cells? Plasma cells. What do B cells become? Plasma cells. Plasma cells come from what type of cell? B cells. B cells become what? Plasma cells. Plasma cells secrete what? Antibodies. What's another word for antibody? Immunoglobulin. What's another word for antibody? Immunoglobulin. So say immunoglobulin. 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 And how do you write immunoglobulin? IG.